Ambassador HFY adjusted his ceremonial robes as he entered the Grand Council chamber. The massive dome stretched above him, filled with representatives from 47 different species. Today was supposed to be simple, just a quarterly trade meeting. But something felt wrong. "Where are the humans?" asked Delegate Mira from her floating platform. Her blue skin rippled with concern as she scanned the empty section usually occupied by the human delegation. HFY waved one of his forearms dismissively. "Probably running late again. You know how they are." The humans had always been strange. They joined the Galactic Council only 50 years ago, much later than most species. While others focused on trade and politics, humans seemed obsessed with exploration. They built huge fleets and called them research vessels, though everyone knew those ships carried enough weapons to destroy planets. "They're not answering our messages," said Captain Yura, his insect-like features clicking with worry. "We've tried for 3 days." "Let them sulk," HFY replied. "They'll come when they need something." But as the meeting continued, the empty human section bothered him more and more. The humans were many things: stubborn, secretive, heavily armed, but they were never irresponsible about trade agreements. Too much money was involved. After the meeting ended, HFY made a decision that would change everything. He ordered a scout ship to check on human space. Captain Yura volunteered to lead the mission. His ship, the Finder, was fast and well-equipped. The journey to human territory took only 2 days through the hyperspace lanes that connected the galaxy. When they arrived at the outer edge of human space, everything looked normal. The automated defense satellites were still active, their green lights blinking in familiar patterns. Trade stations orbited peacefully around gas giants. Nothing seemed wrong. "Scan for human life signs," Yura ordered his crew. The ship's sensors swept across the nearest station. The results made no sense. "Captain," his science officer said slowly, "I'm detecting no human life signs anywhere." "That's impossible. Run the scan again." They scanned 3 more times. Each result was the same: 0 humans detected. Yura felt cold fear creep up his spine. "Take us to Colony 7. It has 3 million humans." Colony 7 was humanity's newest settlement, a beautiful world with crystal cities and floating gardens. As their ship approached, everything looked perfect. The buildings sparkled in the sunlight. Transport pods moved along their tracks. Power readings were normal, but no humans answered their calls. "Request permission to land," Yura said into the communications system. Silence. They landed anyway. Yura led a team through the empty streets. It was the strangest thing he had ever seen. Shops stood open with goods still on the shelves. In a restaurant, meals sat half-eaten on tables, the food still warm. Children's toys were scattered in playgrounds where young humans had been playing just hours before. "It's like they all just vanished," whispered his communications officer. "They searched for 3 days. Every home, every building, every corner of the colony. They found clothing in closets, personal belongings on nightstands, family pictures on walls. But not a single human body, living or dead. In the government building, they found something that made Yura's blood run cold. The security cameras were still recording. He pulled up the footage from 3 days ago. The video showed humans going about their normal lives. Children played in parks. Adults worked in offices. Everything was peaceful. Then, at exactly 14:23 local time, every human in the colony simply stopped what they were doing and walked to the spaceport. They didn't run. They didn't look scared. They just walked calmly, carrying nothing but small bags. The cameras showed them boarding ships in organized groups, families staying together. Within 6 hours, every human was gone. Yura sent his findings to the Galactic Council. Within hours, scout ships were dispatched to every human world and station. The reports that came back were all the same. Every human colony, Every research station, every military base, all empty. Perfectly preserved, but empty. The mystery deepened when scouts reached Earth, the human homeworld. The blue and green planets still spun peacefully in space. Its great cities remained intact. The orbital stations still functioned perfectly, but like everywhere else, no humans remained. On Earth's moon, they found something that chilled every species in the galaxy. A massive communication array was broadcasting the same message on all frequencies, over and over. The vigil ends. Forgive us. Just 4 words, repeated endlessly in the human language. Back on the Galactic Council station, Ambassador HFY stared at the reports piling up on his desk. 43 human worlds. Over 200 research stations. 57 deep space monitoring posts. All abandoned in perfect order. What kind of species just disappears overnight? He muttered to himself. His assistant, a young crystalline being named Kilo, looked up from her work. Maybe they found something out there. Something that scared them enough to run. HFY laughed bitterly. Humans don't run from anything. Have you seen their military records? They'll fight an army with nothing but sharp sticks if they have to. But Kilo's words stayed with him. What could make humanity, stubborn, fearless, heavily armed humanity, abandon everything and leave? He pulled up files on human exploration missions. For 50 years, humans had been pushing deeper into space than any other species. They explored dangerous regions others avoided. They built monitoring stations in empty sectors where nothing lived. The vigil ends, he said quietly, reading the message again. What vigil? What were they watching for? As if in answer to his question, his communication device chimed. A priority message from the outer rim. Ambassador, the voice was shaking with fear. We have a problem. Ships are reporting navigation errors in Sector 447. That's where the humans had their deep space monitoring station. HFY felt something cold settle in his stomach. He had a terrible feeling that humanity's departure was not the end of something, but the beginning. The galaxy was about to learn what humans had been protecting them from. 3 months had passed since humanity vanished. The galaxy tried to return to normal, but normal was becoming harder to find each day. Dr. Kilo Thranks floated in her laboratory, her crystal body reflecting the light from dozens of computer screens. As a crystalline scientist, she could interface directly with electronic systems, making her perfect for analyzing the strange data that kept flowing in from across the galaxy. Another ship lost in hyperspace, she announced to her research team. That makes 17 this month. Her assistant, a furry Belkin named Trix, looked up from his calculations. Where this time? The Helios corridor. Same as 3 others. Kilo's internal lights dimmed with worry. Every ship that's gone missing was traveling through regions where humans had monitoring stations. The problems had started small. A few ships reported navigation errors in areas that had been perfectly safe for centuries. Computer systems would suddenly show readings that made no sense. Distances that changed while you watched them. Stars that appeared in impossible locations. Then came the whispers. Captain Vorth of the merchant ship Lucky Star had been the first to report them. His crew was hauling grain through the Kepler Strait when their communication system picked up something that shouldn't exist. It wasn't language, Vorth had told investigators. His green skin pale with fear. It was like hearing thoughts that weren't meant for minds like ours. My entire crew had nightmares for weeks. Since then, more ships reported similar experiences. The whispers seemed to come from empty space itself, in regions where human deep space stations used to operate. Some crews refused to travel certain routes anymore. Trade was suffering. Kilo had been studying the pattern for weeks. Every incident happened near a former human monitoring post. Every whisper came from the same type of coordinates, areas where space seemed somehow thinner than normal. "Tricks," she said. "Pull up the files on Human Station Omega 7. The station appeared on her main screen. Like all human deep space posts, it looked simple from the outside. Just a metal structure with sensor arrays and communication dishes. But Kilo had studied the station after humans disappeared, and what she found made no sense. The technology inside was far more advanced than anything humans had shown the galaxy. There were machines that measured things she couldn't identify. Computer systems running calculations that seemed to monitor the very structure of space itself. "Dr. Thranks," Trix said nervously, "I'm getting reports from the outer rim. A convoy just had an incident in the Kepler Strait." Kilo's lights flashed red with alarm. "How bad?" "3 ships lost. The survivors are, well, they're not making much sense." An hour later, Kilo was interviewing Captain Hess, commander of the convoy's lead ship. The Jaxian looked like he had aged 10 years in one day. His normally proud military bearing was gone, replaced by the shaky movements of someone who had seen something that broke his understanding of reality. "We were following the standard route," Hess said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Same path we've used for 20 years. Then space just changed." "What do you mean, changed?" Kilo asked gently. Hess closed his eyes. "The stars moved. Not like normal space travel. They twisted. The bright wing was right beside us. Then it was somewhere else. We could see it, but our instruments said it didn't exist." The captain pulled up a recording on his personal device. The video showed space outside his ship's bridge. At first, everything looked normal. Stars. Empty space. The familiar sight of the convoy. Traveling together. Then reality seemed to bend. The stars stretched like someone was pulling on the fabric of space itself. The 3 lost ships became transparent, as if they were fading out of existence. Strange shapes moved in the darkness between stars. Things that hurt to look at directly. "We heard voices," Hess continued. "Not through the radio. Through the hull itself. Metal and plastic carrying sounds that should be impossible." Kilo studied the recording frame by frame. Her advanced vision could see things others missed. In the twisted space where the ships vanished, there were patterns. Geometries that followed no natural law. "Captain, had you ever traveled this route when humans were still here?" "Many times. They always recommended we avoid this area during certain times of year. Said it had solar interference that could damage our engines." Kilo's crystal body began to glow brighter as she processed this information. The humans had steered ships away from dangerous areas. They had monitoring stations in empty sectors. They had technology that measured the structure of space itself. They were watching something. She whispered. "What?" Trix asked. Kilo turned to face her team. The humans weren't just exploring. They were guarding. All those deep space stations, all that advanced technology, all those warnings about dangerous sectors, they were protecting us from something. She pulled up a map of the galaxy, marking every location where incidents had occurred since humanity left. Then she overlaid the positions of human monitoring stations. The pattern was clear. Every incident happened in an area that had lost its human watchers. Dr. Thranks, her communication device chimed. It was Ambassador HFY. "We need you at the council immediately. We have a situation." 20 minutes later, Kilo was in the council's emergency meeting room. Representatives from a dozen species looked at her with frightened eyes. "Tell her what happened," HFY said to a Valthani captain. Captain Yura stood on shaking legs. "My ship was investigating the abandoned human station at Cerberus Point. We were just supposed to catalog their equipment." "What did you find?" Kilo asked. "The station wasn't just a research post," Yura said. "It was a fortress. Hidden weapons, shield generators, and something else. Some kind of machine that was holding something back. Yura activated a holographic display. It showed the interior of the human station, revealing massive devices that pulsed with energy. The machine was still running when we arrived. We could hear it humming through the station's hall. But as we watched, it began to shut down. The humans must have programmed it to stop working eventually. And then? HFY prompted. Then we felt them, watching us. Things that shouldn't exist, pressing against reality itself. The machine was the only thing keeping them out. Siegel felt her crystal structure vibrate with fear. How long before it stops completely? Our engineers estimate 6 months, Yura said quietly. Maybe less. The room fell silent. Finally, HFY spoke. Send ships to every abandoned human station. We need to know what they were fighting. And we need to know how to fight it ourselves. As the meeting ended, Kilo stared at the galactic map. 43 human worlds, all abandoned. Over 200 monitoring stations, all going dark. And somewhere in the empty spaces between stars, something was waiting for the barriers to fall. The whispers were just the beginning. Ambassador HFY had never been this far from civilization before. The journey to Outpost Cerberus took them to the very edge of the galaxy, where stars were scattered thin and space itself seemed darker. His ship, carrying the galaxy's best scientists and military leaders, approached the massive human station. Cerberus was different from other human outposts. Where the others looked like simple research facilities, Cerberus looked like what it was, a fortress. Reading massive energy signatures, announced the ship's science officer. That station is drawing more power than an entire planet. Dr. Kilo floated beside HFY on the bridge, her crystal body flickering with nervous energy. The structure is at least 3 times larger than our estimates from long-range scans. Most of it is hidden behind some kind of shielding. As they docked with the station, HFY felt a strange sensation, like being watched by something vast and patient. The feeling made his skin crawl. The station's airlocks opened automatically, as if the humans had programmed them to welcome visitors. But as the exploration team moved through the corridors, they realized this wasn't a research station at all. "These are weapon systems," said General Korix, examining panels along the walls. The Jaxian military leader had fought in 3 wars and knew destructive technology when he saw it. Energy cannons, shield generators, missile tubes. This entire station is one giant weapon. But the weapons weren't pointed at any known threat. They were aimed at empty space deep in the station's core. They found something that changed everything. A massive chamber filled with machines that hummed with power beyond anything the galaxy had ever built. At the center stood a device that seemed to bend light around itself. Dimensional anchor. Kilo read from a human datapad she found nearby. Maintains barriers between parallel layers of reality. What does that mean? HFY asked. Before Kilo could answer, they found the archives. The human records were extensive and terrifying. Video logs, research data, battle reports, and personal journals spanning 40 years. The first entry was dated just months after humanity joined the Galactic Council. Dr. Kilo accessed the files through her natural interface with electronic systems. The first video showed a young human woman in a research uniform. "Dr. Sarah Chun, recording log entry 1, the woman said. "We've made contact with something that defies every law of physics we know." The video showed star charts and sensor readings that made no sense. Empty regions of space that generated impossible energy signatures. Readings that showed matter existing where instruments detected nothing. "We call them void shepherds," Dr. Chun continued in a later recording, now older and wearing military insignia. "They exist in the spaces between our reality and others. They feed on life itself, but not by destroying bodies. They consume the possibility of life ever having existed. Zexai felt his stomach turn cold. Show us more? The records told a story that made the galaxy's greatest scientists question their understanding of existence itself. 40 years ago, a human exploration vessel called the Pioneer had detected strange readings in a region everyone thought was empty. When they investigated, they found something impossible, a planet that existed and didn't exist at the same time. Instruments showed it was there, but when humans tried to land, their ship passed right through it. Further investigation revealed the truth. The planet was the remains of a world that had been edited out of reality. The shepherds don't destroy civilizations, Admiral Chun explained in a later log. She was older now, with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much. They erase them. They reach into the past and remove the possibility that life ever developed. Entire species, gone as if they never existed. The records showed evidence of dozens of extinct civilizations that had been erased from reality itself. Worlds where complex life should have developed but never did. Systems where planets existed but had never known anything beyond simple bacteria. How do you fight something like that? General Corax asked. The answer came in the form of battle records that spanned decades. Humanity had discovered that the Void Shepherds could only enter normal reality through weak points in space, areas where the boundaries between dimensions were thin. The humans developed technology to strengthen these barriers and built weapons that could damage creatures existing between realities. We've been fighting them for 40 years. Admiral Chung said in one of her final logs, "The galaxy lives in peace because human ships patrol the dark spaces where reality is weak. We've lost so many people that most on our friends and family don't know this war exists." The recordings showed human fleets engaging impossible enemies in the empty regions between stars. Ships firing weapons that bent space itself. Crews sacrificing themselves to repair dimensional barriers while things that couldn't be seen tried to break through. Why didn't they tell anyone? Kilo wondered aloud. Admiral Chun answered that question in her final recording. "We tried to warn the Council early on. They didn't believe us. Some species thought we were making excuses to build larger fleets. Others believed we were trying to scare them into giving us more territory. The evidence we showed them was dismissed as fabrication. The human records showed decades of rejected reports, ignored warnings, and dismissed evidence. The Galactic government had been too comfortable to believe in threats they couldn't see. So we fought alone," Chung continued. Earth's population dropped from 12 billion to 3 billion as we sent generation after generation to hold the line. Our colonies became military bases. Our children grew up knowing they might never see old age. The final entries detailed humanity's last desperate plan. With their numbers failing and the barriers weakening faster than they could repair them, humanity made an impossible choice. "We're leaving," Admiral Chun said, her voice heavy with exhaustion. "Taking our remaining people to another galaxy. Maybe distance will protect us. Maybe it won't, but we can't hold the line anymore." The last video showed something that made Zexai's hearts pound. A map of the galaxy showing hundreds of failing barrier points. Each one represented a weak spot where the Void Shepherds could enter normal reality. "We've left behind everything we learned," Chun said. "All our research, all our technology, all our sacrifice. The barriers will hold for perhaps 6 more months. After that," she looked directly into the camera, "forgive us for leaving. Forgive us for not being strong enough to protect you forever." The video ended, leaving the exploration team in stunned silence. 6 months, Zexai said quietly. "How long has it been since they left?" 4 months, Kilo replied. Through the station's windows, they could see stars that seemed to flicker occasionally, as if something was moving between them and the light. Something vast and patient and hungry. "We need to contact the Council immediately," General Corax said. The entire galaxy needs to know what's coming. As their ship prepared to leave Cerberus Station, HFY looked back at the massive fortress that humans had built in secret. For 40 years, humanity had fought a war to protect species that never knew they needed protection. Now the galaxy had 2 months to learn how to fight an enemy that existed beyond the normal rules of reality. The Void Shepherds were coming. The first system died on a Tuesday. Telixia Prime had been home to 12 billion crystalline beings for over 1,000 years. Their crystal cities caught starlight and turned it into beautiful rainbows. Their peaceful civilization was known throughout the galaxy for art, philosophy, and scientific advancement. When the emergency signals stopped coming from Telixia, the Galactic Council sent rescue fleets immediately. What they found defied every understanding of war, destruction, and death itself. Admiral Vextar commanded the rescue fleet. His ship dropped out of hyperspace, expecting to find ruins, bodies, or signs of battle. Instead, he found something far worse. Telixia Prime was still there. The planet spun peacefully around its star, exactly as it had for millions of years. The cities remained intact. The crystal formations that gave the crystalline species their beauty still grew in perfect patterns, but they were empty. Not damaged or destroyed, empty as if they had never been built for living beings. "Scan for life signs," Admiral Vextar ordered his crew. "Sir," his science officer replied slowly, "I'm not detecting any life signs." "But that's not the strange part." "What's the strange part?" "I'm not detecting any signs that life ever existed here. No organic compounds in the soil. No fossil records. No traces of biological activity anywhere on the planet." Admiral Vextar felt his stomach drop. "That's impossible. We have thousands of years of contact with the Thelixians. According to our instruments, sir, this planet has never hosted complex life forms." The rescue teams that landed on Telixia Prime found a world that made no sense. Cities built by no one, for no one. Art galleries filled with beautiful works that celebrated life, but created by a species that had apparently never existed. Schools with no students, hospitals with no patients, homes with no families. "It's like someone edited them out of reality," Dr. Kilo said when she studied the reports. Her crystal body dimmed with horror as she understood what they were facing. The Void Shepherds hadn't killed the Thelixians. They had erased them from existence itself, removing the possibility that the species had ever developed. But the physical structures remained because they had been observed and recorded by other species. Reality couldn't completely erase something that existed in the memories and records of others. 3 days later, the Hepari system vanished the same way. 5 billion insectoid beings, gone as if they had never existed. Their hive cities remained, but empty of any trace that living creatures had ever built them. Panic spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Ambassador HFY stood before the emergency session of the Galactic Council, delivering news that no one wanted to hear. Representatives from dozens of species listened as he explained what humanity had been fighting for 40 years. "The barriers are failing faster than our experts predicted," he announced. "We estimate we have weeks, not months, before the Void Shepherds can enter normal space anywhere in the galaxy." The Belkan delegate, her fur standing on end with fear, asked the question everyone was thinking. "What can we do? Our weapons can't fight something that exists outside reality." "The humans left behind their research," HFY replied. "But their technology requires constant adjustment and maintenance. Every time we activate one of their dimensional anchors, it draws the Shepherds' attention and they attack that location specifically." General Kark stepped forward. "We've tried to activate the human defenses at 17 locations. Each time, the system works for a few hours, then fails. We don't understand how they did it for 40 years. The truth was becoming clear. Human crews had been uniquely suited to maintaining the dimensional barriers. Something about their biology, their technology, or their understanding of reality allowed them to keep the defenses working. Other species couldn't replicate their success. Dr. Kilo had studied the problem for days without finding a solution. The human equipment responds to them in ways we don't understand. It's like the machines recognize their operators on a level deeper than simple programming. As the council debated, more systems fell to the shepherds. The Urani cluster, home to 3 different species, became empty worlds where life had never existed. The Spiral Gardens, a beautiful region where the ethereal species lived as pure energy beings, became normal space with no trace of the extraordinary life forms it had hosted. Each loss followed the same pattern. Normal space where extraordinary civilizations had thrived became ordinary systems where complex life had never developed. The shepherds weren't destroying, they were editing reality itself. Refugee fleets fled toward the galactic core, leaving behind home systems that might be next. Trade collapsed as entire shipping routes became too dangerous to travel. Some species began to wonder if they should surrender and hope the shepherds would spare them. But surrender wasn't possible against an enemy that didn't negotiate or communicate. The Void Shepherds weren't conquerors who wanted territory or resources. They were gardeners who saw the galaxy as overgrown with life that needed to be culled. Ambassador Zexai made a desperate decision. Using long-range communications equipment that the humans had left behind, he attempted to contact humanity in their new galaxy. The response came 3 days later. Admiral Chun's face appeared on the communication screen, but she looked older and sadder than in her recorded logs. "You want us to come back," she said without preamble, "to fight a war that was never ours to begin with." Zexai swallowed his pride. "We were wrong. We should have listened. We should have helped. But we can't change the past. Can you help us now?" Admiral Chun was quiet for a long moment. Behind her, Zexai could see other humans working frantically at computer stations. "Do you know what it cost us to fight them?" Chun asked finally. 40 years of children growing up knowing they might die in battles against monsters that most of the galaxy didn't even believe existed. Entire generations of our people sacrificed to protect species who thought we were lying about the threat. "I know," Zexai said. "And I'm asking anyway." 3 more systems have fallen while we've been talking, Chung continued. The Meridian colonies, the Outer Reaches, and the Sigma Nebula settlements. At this rate, the entire galaxy will be edited within 6 months. Zexai felt despair settle in his chest. "So there's nothing we can do?" Admiral Chun smiled for the first time in the conversation. "I didn't say that. We've been busy in Andromeda. Free from the immediate threat, our scientists made some breakthroughs. We think we found a way to seal the dimensional rifts permanently. What do you need?" Zexai asked immediately. "Everything," Chun replied. "Ships, resources, and volunteers from every species in the galaxy. The solution isn't just about technology. It's about sacrifice." Chun explained the plan that humanity had developed. Instead of constantly maintaining barriers that could fail, they could seal the rifts between dimensions permanently. But the process required volunteers to become dimensional guardians, beings who existed partially in void space to maintain the seals. They would live forever, Chun said, but they would never again be fully part of normal reality. It's not death, but it's not really life as we know it either. The silence in the council chamber was broken by Dr. Kilo stepping forward. "I volunteer," she said simply. "My species can interface with exotic technology. If this plan requires guardians, the crystalline will provide them." One by one, representatives from other species stepped forward. The Balkans offered their understanding of multidimensional mathematics. The Jaxians pledged their military discipline. Even the proud Velthani, who had been skeptical of humanity for decades, volunteered their best scientists. Admiral Chun watched as species that had been enemies and rivals united in the face of extinction. "There's something else," she said. "Something the shepherds need to understand. They're not just gardeners. They're gardeners in a galaxy that already has guardians. This time, we won't be fighting alone." The message was clear. Humanity was coming home, but they weren't coming as humanity's saviors. They were coming as part of a galactic force united in purpose. The real war was about to begin. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace like ghosts returning to haunt their abandoned home. Admiral Chun's flagship, the Eternal Vigil, led 200 vessels toward the galactic core where representatives from 47 species waited. Ambassador HFY watched from the observation deck as the human ships approached. They looked different now, sleeker, more advanced, carrying technology developed during their time in Andromeda. But more than that, they looked tired. Even their ships seemed to carry the weight of 40 years spent fighting an impossible war. "Docking request approved," HFY said into his communicator. "Welcome home." Admiral Chun met him in the station's main conference room. She was older now, her hair completely gray, but her eyes still held the determination that had kept humanity fighting when everyone else remained ignorant of the threat. "How many systems have we lost?" she asked without pleasantries. 17, HFY replied. "The rate is increasing. Our scientists estimate we have 3 weeks before the barriers fail completely." Chun nodded grimly. "Our calculations agree. But we brought something that might change everything." She activated a holographic display showing the galaxy. Red zones marked areas where the Void Shepherds had already entered normal space. Yellow zones showed weakening barriers. Only a small section near the galactic core remained green, safe space where reality remained stable. "The problem was never defeating the Shepherds," Chun explained. "They're not evil in any way we understand. They're cosmic gardeners who believe reality becomes unstable when too much life develops in one area." Dr. Kilo, her crystal body now enhanced with human-designed interfaces, studied the display. "So they call civilizations to maintain balance?" "Exactly. But here's what we learned in Andromeda. They're not the only gardeners in the universe. Every galaxy has them, but most also develop species that take on the guardian role voluntarily." Chun pointed to the display. "The Shepherds aren't trying to destroy us. They're trying to do a job they think no one else can handle. We need to show them that this galaxy has its own guardians now." The plan Chun outlined was more complex than anything the galaxy had ever attempted. Instead of fighting the Shepherds or hiding from them, they would create a permanent guardian force drawn from all species. But it required volunteers to make a sacrifice that none of them fully understood. "The dimensional anchors we'll create aren't machines," Chun explained. "They're living beings who exist partially in void space. They can communicate with the Shepherds directly and maintain the barriers indefinitely." "What happens to the volunteers?" asked General Karks. Chun's expression grew sad. "They live forever, but they're no longer fully part of normal reality. They can observe our universe, but they can't participate in it the way they used to. It's not death, but it's not the life they knew either." The room fell silent as representatives considered what Chun was asking. To save their civilizations, volunteers would have to give up their place in those civilizations forever. Dr. Kilo was the first to speak. "How many volunteers do you need?" "One for each major dimensional rift. Our calculations show 43 anchor points across the galaxy. The crystalline species volunteers 12 guardians," Kilo said immediately. One by one, other species made their pledges. The Belkans offered 10 volunteers. The Jaxians pledged 8 of their best military officers. Even the smallest species contributed what they could. When the count was finished, They had 67 volunteers from 31 different species. The process began at the edge of the galaxy, where the first dimensional rifts had opened. Human ships carrying multi-species crews traveled to each anchor point. The volunteers included scientists, soldiers, artists, and teachers, beings from every walk of life, united in their willingness to sacrifice for others. Ambassador Zexai insisted on being one of the volunteers. Despite protests from his government, he felt responsible for the galaxy's failure to help humanity. When they first discovered the threat, the transformation process was unlike anything anyone had experienced. Volunteers were surrounded by technology that shifted them partially into void space. They remained conscious and aware, but their perception of reality changed fundamentally. "I can see them," Zexai reported from his anchor point. His voice now carried strange harmonics that made it seem to come from multiple dimensions at once. "The shepherds are approaching. They're curious." Across the galaxy, the new Guardians began to communicate with the Void Shepherds directly. The conversation took place on levels deeper than language, involving concepts that normal three-dimensional minds couldn't fully grasp. Dr. Kilo, now serving as a dimensional anchor near the galactic core, transmitted her experience to the other Guardians. "They're not hostile. They're confused. They've been trying to cull this galaxy for millennia, but life keeps developing faster than they can manage it." The breakthrough came when the Guardians showed the Shepherds something unprecedented in cosmic history. A galaxy where the inhabitants had voluntarily taken on the Guardian role themselves. "They understand now," Admiral Chun reported from the coordination station. "The Shepherds see that this galaxy has developed its own caretakers." They're relieved. The Void Shepherds began to withdraw from normal space, but they didn't disappear entirely. Instead, they took on a new role: advisors and teachers for the Dimensional Guardians, sharing knowledge of cosmic balance that they had gathered over millions of years. The barriers stabilized. The erased systems remained lost. 17 civilizations that would never exist again, but the rest of the galaxy was safe. More importantly, it was protected by its own people. In the months that followed, the Vigil became the galaxy's most important institution. Representatives from every species worked together to support the Dimensional Guardians and maintain the cosmic balance the Shepherds had tried to preserve. Admiral Chun established a new headquarters on Earth, which had become a symbol of sacrifice and protection. The planet's recovered population began to grow again as humans returned from Andromeda, but they were no longer alone in their burden. "The Watch continues" became the motto of the new galactic order. It was carved into monuments on 1,000 worlds, spoken at ceremonies honoring the Guardians, and taught to children as the most important lesson of their species' history. Ambassador Zexai, now existing as a bridge between normal space and the void, sent regular messages to the galaxy he helped protect. His communications carried wisdom from conversations with beings that existed beyond conventional reality. "We see everything now," he reported in one transmission. "Every star, every world, every life form that develops in this galaxy. But more than that, we see the connections between them all. The Shepherds were right that balance is needed, but they were wrong about how to achieve it. Life doesn't need to be limited," he continued. "It needs to be guided. The Guardian Force isn't just about maintaining barriers anymore. We help civilizations develop in ways that strengthen the galaxy rather than strain it." Years passed, and the galaxy became more united than ever before. The shared experience of near extinction had broken down barriers between species. Trade flourished along routes protected by Dimensional Guardians. Scientific cooperation reached new levels as species shared knowledge to support their protectors. Dr. Kilo, speaking from her position as a Guardian, provided regular updates on the cosmic balance. The shepherds visit sometimes. They're impressed with what we've built. Apparently, most galaxies either submit to culling or fight until they destroy themselves. We're the first to develop a true partnership. The human colonies that had been abandoned began to flourish again, but now they house mixed populations from across the galaxy. Children grew up learning about the secret war their galaxy had fought, and the price that had been paid for their safety. Admiral Chung, now elderly but still commanding the Vigil's operations, gave a speech on the 10th anniversary of the crisis. As historians had begun calling it, humanity fought alone for 40 years, she said to an audience representing every species in the galaxy. We did it because we believed all sentient life deserved protection, even if they didn't know they needed protection. But the real victory wasn't defeating the shepherds. It was learning to share the burden. No single species should ever have to carry the weight of protecting others alone. That's the lesson the galaxy learned, and it's the lesson we'll pass on to future generations. The speech ended with a moment of silence for the dimensional guardians, beings who lived forever in service to others, watching over a galaxy that finally understood the true meaning of protection in the void between dimensions. 67 guardians from 31 species continued their eternal watch. They could see every star in the galaxy, communicate with cosmic forces beyond imagination, and guide the development of civilizations across thousands of worlds. They had given up their old lives, but they had gained something perhaps more valuable, the knowledge that their sacrifice had united an entire galaxy in peace. The vigil continued, but now it was shared by all.